But in the year 2026, does Swiss neutrality still actually, mean anything? And what does Swiss neutrality actually mean even?
Swiss neutrality is not an objective of our foreign policy. Neutrality is an instrument of our foreign policy, but it is an instrument that is very dear to the Swiss population. It's part of the Swiss DNA, basically.
Switzerland and Asia Pacific do not always end up in the same sentence. One is a landlocked country of 9 million people tucked into the middle of Europe. The other is home to more than half of the world's population, some of the fastest growing economies in the planet, and some of the most complex diplomatic terrain in the world. And yet, the two are more connected than most people realize. This is Swiss Perspectives, a podcast produced by the Asia Pacific social media hub of Present Switzerland. Each episode, I sit down with someone who works at the intersection of Switzerland and the region to have this kind of conversation that does not usually make the press releases. I'm Matthew, and let's get into it. So, my guest today has spent nearly 3 decades in Swiss diplomacy across 4 continents and now leads Switzerland's entire Asia-Pacific division at the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs. You've been ambassador to Egypt, Iran, and the United Kingdom, and today he is here in Singapore. So, without further ado, I'm very proud to announce our first guest here in the podcast, Your Excellency Ambassador Markus Leitner. Rather than have me, tell your story and, list down everything you've been working on, I'd rather much give you the floor to do so. So, Ambassador, welcome to Swiss Perspectives.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's great to be the first one.
Yeah. I think it's a good opportunity because I think, as the ambassador to the division or to the Asia Pacific, you would sort of be the best person to, give a bird's eye perspective of what Switzerland is really doing in the region, given your experiences in, the Middle East and the UK. What exactly brought you to this region now?
For me, Asia Pacific is a new region to explore, and obviously I joined the diplomatic service exactly for that, to learn about the world, to learn about other countries, other cultures, and this curiosity is what's driving me. And so it's great to be here, great to explore a fast-growing, young continent, and where Switzerland has strong interests.
So what exactly has surprised you so far? And, talking about trying to explore new cultures and understand new parts of the world, is there anything that genuinely surprised you with the Asia Pacific?
Well, as you say, I'm traveling quite a bit in the region. That's part of my job. And wherever I go and I talk to people about Switzerland or what they know about Switzerland, you get very similar answers. People know the mountain cheese and chocolate. They know the Swiss Army knife, the Matterhorn, yes. And the punctual trains. They know Swiss watches, Geneva, Roger Federer. And many of these cliches are somewhat inaccurate or outdated, but they're always positive. Mm-hmm. Switzerland has an extremely positive image all over Asia.
Yes.
And that's a capital, like that's a potential that we have, and a very solid base for our work. We are an innovation leader, a very competitive country. There are more aspects than, say, the old cliches, but this is a very solid base that we have here in Asia. And so that makes my work rather easy, I have to say.
I can imagine like most of the individuals you're meeting, either in government or non-government, the first thing that they say is, "Oh, Switzerland mountains, cheese," yes. Right?
Exactly, and that's
common.
That's pretty common. But it again, we should not deviate from that. This is part of the Swiss reality. We just have to add on to what Switzerland is also. It's the CERN, it's the model of vocational training. Mm-hmm. It has many more aspects and many stories to tell. And that's, I think, we see with, again, the Asians are very curious to learn more about Switzerland, even that they know already some elements or some cliches. But this is, as I said, a very solid base.
Yeah, you mentioned stories. I'm actually curious, do you have any like interesting stories of like any meetings or encounters that you've had in the region?
Well, I just was in Nepal and I visited some projects in the area of vocational training. And vocational training in Switzerland is a very important element of our education system. It basically guarantees an education that is close to the needs of the labor market. And Nepal is now introducing a system like this, very much shaped or inspired by Switzerland, adapted obviously to the Nepalese context. Because in many countries, there is a plan A, which is sending your kids to university, and a plan B, if this doesn't work, which is then some sort of an apprenticeship or something like this. In Switzerland, you have two plan A's. And so this is university or vocational training. And Nepal is working exactly on that. And it was great to see government, companies, but also apprentices who are going through this system now, still at the start, but very much in the same spirit. And the results that we've seen, I mean, they started with about 60, 70 apprentices. They are now at more than 7,000 per year.
Oh, wow.
And these people will have jobs. There is a very high rate of engagement that they follow up with secure jobs afterwards. So it is a good model that they copied in a way from Switzerland. And so, yeah, surprising, but at the same time, very satisfying to see that we can inspire. It's not that we are exporting models. We are try to show what we do, and if others are inspired by it, even better.
And you think like this idea of like, not necessarily exporting, but showcasing our experiences is something that's unique to Switzerland, or how would you describe that basically? Is it something that that we've been doing for a long time as Swiss?
I think that's always, we are a country that has no colonial past or any big power ambitions. So it's never been our approach to export things or tell people how to do things. And these models are not thought through models. These are models that have developed over time and adjusted to the needs. And so there are models that are not just on paper, that they are lived in daily lives in Switzerland. And that's why we say, all right, have a look, see what you can take out of that. It's not that you can copy paste, because you should adapt that to your own needs and context.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, you mentioned like Switzerland having no, big power ambition. So, the region is very much, surrounded by water, wide coastlines and everything, which Switzerland does not have. Switzerland has no coastline, no colonial history in Asia, and it's not even a member of the European Union. So what exactly is it doing here in the Asia Pacific?
First, we are a landlocked country, but we are very much a maritime country. The biggest container shipping company is based in Switzerland. We have a very unique logistics platform in Switzerland that spans the globe, and the commodity trading platform in Switzerland. So these ships that you see in the harbor of Singapore or that are passing the straits here, many of them are Swiss owned, even though they might not have a Swiss pavilion. So we have interests all over the globe, and many of them in Asia. And we've been in Asia for a long time. So in the 19th century, we had the first outposts, the first consulate in Manila, and we developed our network here basically a lot through trade. And based on that, now we are broadening our approaches to obviously political, but also science, education, and many more fields that we see there is an interest in Asia to engage with Switzerland, and we have definitely an interest to learn and to engage a young public.
And you mentioned like the various interests or the various work that Switzerland is engaged in. You mentioned already science, technology, innovation, and whatnot. Do you feel like this is something that is common? The region. I think the region is very vast, right? And when I say Asia Pacific, that's from Central Asia all the way to New Zealand. Would you say that the work that Switzerland has been doing in the entire region is, I would say, uniform or common, or are there various topics or fields that are of interest to, like, let's say, one side, but not necessarily the other side?
I think it is obviously a huge region.
Yeah.
We have a very broad presence. That's on purpose. We are not part, as you mentioned, of the European Union, of NATO, of many of the clubs that exists. We are a neutral country, so we have to have our own network, and that's what we have developed over centuries and decades. And yes, this network is obviously built in a way that it can adapt to the local circumstances, the local needs. So it's definitely not the same topics everywhere. We talk to Singapore on finance. We talk to Korea on science. We talk to Japan on industrial productions and vice versa. So we always find the common interest. There is not that we see we are completely different.
And you mentioned, like, surprises and trying to find various opportunities for collaboration. Has there, in your term as the head of the division, has anything interesting popped up? I'm actually curious. Or, like, is there any, like, been new developments with the relationship between Switzerland and one country or another?
Not a surprises as such, but we see now with climate change that this is a region, particularly obviously in the Pacific, that is quite hit by climate change impacts. So we have been traditionally, as a mountainous country, very alert to topics like disaster risk reductions in terms of landslides and avalanches, and we see we can work with countries that are as well prone to disaster, like the Philippines or Indonesia, where we are working very closely together on disaster risk reduction. And what you then see is it's great to have people talking the same language, because not necessarily because it's the same language itself, but they know what they're talking about because they are facing the same risks and dangers. And so there are areas of cooperation that we maybe 50 years ago haven't planned, but now it's reality.
So that you would say that basically Switzerland is adapting to the needs of each country in the region and trying to say, okay, how can we support more or less, or how can we give our expertise?
It's not just about giving expertise, but it's to say, well, we have a circle of interests and topics, and then there's the host country that has its own interests and know-how, and we then see what we have in common, and that's the work we do. We'll try to expand the commonalities, obviously, but that's the starting point everywhere.
We both agreed how wide the region is, how various the interests are, the concerns, or maybe the areas of expertise and collaboration is. So basically, why should anyone in the region care about Switzerland? I mean, we have representations in the Pacific, which I would know takes hours and hours to travel by, even by plane, right? So given the distance, even the language is not the same. So why would anyone in the region, care really about Switzerland and what it has to offer?
It's not that we say you have to care about Switzerland. We just see that there is an interest and a curiosity. People are traveling to Switzerland as tourists. People know the Swiss products. Nestle in the Philippines is 1% of GDP. So they associate this huge Swiss company and say, maybe not necessarily as these are Swiss products, but they are locally produced and sourced. But that there is automatically an association with Swiss quality, with what Switzerland is doing. It's not an image we are selling, but it shows the appreciation that we have throughout the region for certain trades and for certain characteristics that the country stands for. As I said, sometimes it's slightly dated or inaccurate, but always positive. Well, I think these are the consumer products that we know and see, and it's great to have such products to showcase innovation. But obviously, most innovation that happen in Switzerland you don't see in a daily life. Switzerland is an innovation country because we lack natural resources, except say from water. So we invest in people, and we invest in innovation, and that's been a success model so far. But most innovations you don't see. You don't see what is happening at CERN in Geneva. There's a lot of basic know-how that is produced at Swiss universities, which are part of the world's best universities and research institutes. So there's a lot of innovation happening, which only then slowly translates into new medicine or in new products on the market. But we're proud of these innovations, and I think it's a side that is maybe a little bit less known, particularly in Asia. As I said, the cliches are slightly dated, and it's now our job to update, I think, the public, and I'm very glad that you do that through podcasts like this.
Yeah, I mean, talking about innovation, even the way we communicate about Switzerland has to be innovative, right? Yeah. Or has to catch up with what's basically the trend. We talked a lot about what Switzerland is doing in the region, the work that we're engaged in, the brands, the products, the Swiss identity. But what does Switzerland actually want in return for all of these collaborations? Because I mean, we can't always just give something without expecting something in return, right?
We don't have a short-term self-interest that we portray. Obviously, for us, the Asian region is an important market for products and services. That's why we have a series of new free trade agreements with Malaysia, with Thailand, with Indonesia. We want to develop this market for our products, but we see as well this is important for our supply chains, and so it goes both ways. We see this as part of our diversification strategy that we have on a global scale. We want to open these countries and to interest them into Swiss affairs. And as I said, if they travel to Switzerland, we can develop tourism, and we see a lot of Asian tourists arriving these days, and the good growth even better. So that's what we want to get out. But there are certain niches of interest, especially these days. We talk a lot more about geopolitics. We have a long history on the Korean Peninsula, for example, with the Neutral Nations Supervisory Committee at the border between North and South Korea and Panmunjom. That's a traditional element where Switzerland is here to provide a communication channel, to provide a platform for trust building, where we feel very strongly about, and we see this in Asia. There is potential for more, where Switzerland could come in, not as a mediator who solves problems, but rather for bringing people together and have a trusted partner.
I didn't actually know that we are engaged in that level with Korea.
And I think what Switzerland tries wherever we are is if we can make a contribution that unwanted escalation does not take place, to create, as I said, a communication platform, to create a trust base. That's where Switzerland has an added value, I think, because we are can be a trusted partner to different sides.
You touched on the topic of neutrality already, and traveling actually. So you're here in Singapore, just to give a bit more context to our viewers here, or to our listeners here. You're here in Singapore for the Shangri-La Dialogues, and it's a room full of defense ministers and military chiefs, all discussing a world that is becoming, more volatile and more fragmented. So the theme of this year is essentially about security partnerships in a world that is pulling apart. And you are in the room as, well, one of the representatives of a neutral country. But in the year 2026, does Swiss neutrality still actually, mean anything? And what does Swiss neutrality actually mean even?
Swiss neutrality is not an objective of our foreign policy. Neutrality is an instrument of our foreign policy, but it is an instrument that is very dear to the Swiss population. It's part of the Swiss DNA, basically. This is not a new feature. This is something that we have over decades and centuries. And so I think it is a very credible feature of our foreign policy and of our defense policy. But we have to make sure that this neutrality, which we feel is beneficial to Switzerland is also beneficial to the rest of the world. A neutral country has always to prove that this neutrality is not just enforced, but it's also beneficial to the rest of the world. It's only if it's beneficial, people will accept it. If you're an ally, you have your contractual obligations, but as a neutral, you need to be accepted as neutral, and you're only accepted if you are beneficial. And we do this with a peace policy, with a policy of good offices, where people can see you can come to Geneva, and we will always offer a table for negotiation. We are providing mediation services, good offices. Wherever we are asked to do so, we talk to everybody, and peace usually happens at around a negotiation table. You need to talk to everybody, and you even need to talk to the more difficult actors. We're ready to do so wherever we can make a contribution. We're not imposing ourselves, but wherever it's felt that Switzerland can help with the know-how. And so that's the way we want to prove that neutrality is an important feature, particularly in this world that is fast changing, where trust has been eroded, where communications become difficult. I think it's even more important to do the work that we do, and we have to invest in that.
But to clarify, what exactly is Swiss neutrality? I mean, before I was with working with Switzerland, for me, Switzerland won't take sides. I can go to Switzerland. I can count on them to not, choose one side over the other. So what is that? Is that actually what neutrality is? I mean, especially with what's happening now. Is that still relevant, basically? Yeah.
Well, neutrality is an easy concept, if you like. If you look at least international law, it is an easy concept. It's to say we are not supporting any of the warring parties, especially not militarily. And we are not lending our territory to one or the other warring party. So we are defending our territory against breaches, so that you can't use Swiss airspace to fly to war zones, for example. And we have seen this now with the war in Iran, that we would not allow the Swiss airspace to be used for fighter jets that are going into this theater. So still, this is the military or say the international law, but neutrality is farther than that. We call it the neutrality policy. And the question then is, how do you go about within this clear space there that you can add on? So we decided to take sanctions against a permanent member of the UN Security Council for the first time. We've always taken sanctions, nothing new. We've taken sanctions against Myanmar. We followed all the UN sanctions in the past. So sanctions is not new to us, but it was new to have sanctions against a permanent member of the UN Security Council, given the flagrant violation of international law. So many people said, "Oh, you're giving up neutrality." It's not at all the case. This is, again, sanctions are it's an instrument of foreign policy, as is neutrality. But you have to then see how are we using our policy of neutrality in the best and most efficient way.
So, you talked a lot about the region and the work that Switzerland is engaged in. You talked about neutrality, but I'm curious, given what you've learned in the experience that you've had so far, where does the relationship actually go from here?
Well, we see obviously this is a growth region in many ways. So we want to be a partner to this region. We had always say a global approach. We have a universal network of embassies, and we've always been present from the early days in Asia. And we want to deepen this partnership and to broaden the areas of cooperation.
Is there anything that you can share that Switzerland is currently, working on to solidify in the relationship? Like something like you mentioned earlier, free trade agreements with some countries in Southeast Asia. Are there any other specific opportunities or specific instruments that Switzerland is looking at to deepen the relationship with the region that you can share?
On trade, the basis is definitely the free trade agreements, but obviously you need also agreements on investment protection. on double taxation. These are going with these kinds of agreement in terms of investments. But then you have other areas like science and technology, where we see countries like Korea. We have activities here in Singapore. But there are also the niches that I mentioned, the disaster risk reduction, the vocational training. There are many more areas where we have common interests and where we feel very comfortable to be in Asia.
Yeah, so I was trying to recall the geographic setup of the region. Is there anything that we're trying to that we're engaged in with for the Pacific countries, for example, Australia, New Zealand? Anything that we can that you want to sort of touch upon?
Well, if you look at the Pacific Islands, for example, what we have been actively doing is to bring them to Geneva. And most of the Pacific Island states now have an office in Geneva.
Okay.
Geneva is the platform that is dealing with the topics that are relevant to Pacific Island states. Climate change being one of them, but there are many other topics. So we want them to be at the table. We want them to be to have a voice and to be able to shape these decisions. And so it's important to bring them to Geneva. That in itself brings them closer to Switzerland with an office there. At the same time, they are we're building up as well some more bilateral cooperation with them. These countries are far, far away, as you say, in terms of
very far
flights, but we've shortened the distance, and we're very proud that we now have, thanks to these Pacific Island states missions in Geneva, the same number of missions in Geneva as there are in New York.
Okay.
Geneva is the place in terms of multilateral work, and it's the most important UN center to prepare decisions, to negotiate issues, and so and that's where the Pacific particularly plays an important role.
As somebody who works a lot with the region, I sometimes feel like, okay, I have a good background of what everyone's doing, but it's conversations like with people like you who are very much deeply invested and engaged with the region that I'm like, oh wow, we're really doing a lot, honestly. And I would want to keep you here for the whole day, but I can't, of course. And maybe just to wrap things up, you've been in the role since September. I think you're here for 3-4 more years. At the end of this period, what would make you feel that, this engagement and this work with this very dynamic region was worth it at the end?
Well, I already feel it's worth it. It's not that I have a particular end goal that needs to be accomplished as such. It's for me, I have this curiosity to learn more about the region, to learn more about the people living here, about the developments. As I said, it's a very dynamic region. So it's great to work in this region and to work with a Swiss hat in this region. It's a real pleasure. So we will continue on this course. Very curious to see this region develop. I think we can learn a lot in terms of these power dynamics that we see in terms of China, India, the US, Russia, and how are these countries in the region moving along with these different developments, geopolitical developments. That's as well important to us to learn. We see obviously a young generation coming up. They are curious, they're innovative. I do feel there is a lot of potential, as I said, to cooperate and to do great projects together.
And at the end of the day, if this new generation comes up and when they hear Switzerland, they don't think about just cheese and chocolate, but innovation and our work in the region, then that would be a good job then, I guess.
Well, Matthew, I think this is your job too.
True.
And but I will gladly support you on this because I think it is worthwhile. As I say, for this region, there's so much to discover. And I think there's a lot more as well to discover from Switzerland for the Asian region. So I think we have a mutual interest to be in touch and to exchange and to foster this exchange. And particularly this people-to-people exchange, I think is very worthwhile to do.
Okay. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time. And of course, keep in touch. And I'd love to hear more about your work next time you're in the region then.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for having me. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.